Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Elevated Office Podcast. My name is Eric McGrew. You don't want to see my ugly mug, so I'm sharing the screen with Josiah Georgeson. He is S2E27-Strider on Instagram and on YouTube. Do you have a Facebook or anything, man?
Yeah, I've got a Facebook. It's Strider. Well, I think it's Strider Trees. It's kind of what I'm moving everything towards.
Are you Strider Trees on Instagram too, or is it S2E27-Strider?
No, it's S2E27-Strider. Yeah.
Okay. So Strider Trees on some things, S2E27-Strider on others. Just look it up and you'll find him.
Yep, I'm around.
Yeah, YouTube, he has a lot of really cool videos.
Strider tree gear there. Yep.
Yeah. And he's putting out higher quality videos than unfortunately I am. So he's got some good stuff going on. Go check that out. He also has a new podcast that's not tree related. It's well, you explain what it is.
Yeah, it's called Truth and Fiction, and it's been my passion project lately. It's kind of a way to look at ethics and morality and to connect over what it means to be human by analyzing the most popular fiction stories, whether that's movies or books. A couple of recent ones we did was the Avengers Endgame. We've done The Great Gatsby as one of the classic American novels. We did recently actually a Chinese novel called The Three Body Problem. That was this really fun science fiction that like addresses existential risk. Ender's Game, Pirates of the Caribbean. Like we cover the whole gamut. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. So you can go check out his podcast. It's on all the main directories for podcasts, right?
Yeah. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and a few others. But those are the main ones.
So go check that out if you guys want to hear more about that. And this is season 2, episode 27. If I have that
27.
Right.
Killing it, Eric.
Of Elevated Office Podcast. Well, I got to tell you, man, it's way easier to produce a podcast than it is to produce tutorial videos and gear reviews where you have to have,
Well, I don't produce it. That's just it. I mean, the reason it has any kind of quality is because I literally pay my brother to do all of the back editing because I can't stand it.
And that's why you're killing me in your views and in your subscribers on YouTube. And
dude, he knows how to work the system. He's got it way more figured out than I do. And so I just leave it in his hands. Yeah,
it is hard. And I'm just messing with you. I've been in and out of the YouTube game for like a decade in different industries, and it's hard, man.
Well, it's brutal because these platforms reward just stupid amounts of consistency. So like I missed 1 week and I put out like a couple of different style videos with the week before. For the next month, all my metrics were down like 20%. For the next month, 2 months, I still haven't gotten back to where I was before that. That was like 3 months ago.
Yeah, so
it's just crazy.
It's so crazy, man. It's like the length of your videos counts against you or towards you. The style of video shoot, because the spiders watch the video and figure out how the metric of it goes. And then also your release dates, how frequent, like how consistent they are.
Well, and it all boils down to one thing. It's how often does someone click on your video when it's presented, and how long do they stay on your content? So if you can present, engage, I mean, obviously it's supposed to select for really engaging, interesting content. So like it's supposed to get people what they want theoretically, but it also motivates. I mean, it tends to incentivize clickbaity titles, flashy, high contrast images.
But everybody is.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's really hard.
You can't avoid it. I hate it. I
it's really
I put
hard.
titles like, the best, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I
can't say the best because it's an opinion.
No. Right. I know it's more nuanced than that, but that's what I got to say because it gets people fired up and they click on it.
I know. So along with Josiah being with us today, of course, I have to mention my sponsors who I'm super thankful for because they make having Josiah on the program possible. There's a bit more expense to podcasting than a lot of people realize. So, I appreciate them. GapArborSupply.com, of course, was my first sponsor, and I'm super stoked to be working with them. Not just because they support me, but because I think they're genuinely an awesome shop to deal with. And then
I've heard nothing but good things about them.
Yeah, they're busy this time, like what I was just telling you, but they like really. So I've dealt with a number of shops, and they're genuinely interested in you as a climber, and they have climbing knowledge, which makes it awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're in contact with a bunch of climbers. So a bunch of their ambassadors like me are on the East Coast, and a lot of the original ones actually live near them. So like Zigzag Man, Zach Richards.
Yeah.
He and there's 3 others that I can't even remember their names right now, but they're always in and out of the shop. Sometimes they answer the phone at the shop. And like if it's a rain day, they come in and they answer the phone, and it's like, so Kyle and Austin and Ray, who are at the store and who you'll actually be talking to on the phone, they actually ask and get feedback from actual climbers on devices and stuff, and what they like about it, what they don't, what rope it pairs well with and what it doesn't. So they can kind of give you not an answer,
some direction there on some of that. That's
yeah.
so valuable, especially if you're a new climber. I mean, there's nothing better than getting direct in-person feedback, someone there who's actually used the equipment to explain all the very subtle nuances, because it can make a big difference when you're starting out. Just knowing how something interacts. It can be like that. The ART spider jack is a classic example of a device that, like, in theory is just the best you can possibly have. But in practice, as a new climber, I didn't like it at all. And it doesn't inspire confidence. It's really unnerving. But once you get fluid with it, it's a dream. Like it's crazy. But anyway.
Yeah, and see, Zach was saying the same kind of thing with it. He's like, that is an awesome device if you know what you're doing. But it's finesse.
Really trust it.
Yeah, and it's all finesse, right? It's all just the slightest.
It's all on your thumb.
Yeah.
It's all on your thumb. It's so weird.
Same thing as like the hitchhiker, right? A lot of people are like, what's the point of a hitchhiker when I've been climbing on a prusik, or, you know, I have a rope wrench and a prusik and a pulley. Why? It's the finesse and understanding those subtle differences. It's like a fine wine versus a $5 bottle of wine. You know what I mean?
Oh man. I mean, and you just can't learn that without playing with them all. And I mean, this stuff's also, every single climb device is $200 plus.
Oh, it's $300 when you get it all together, right?
Right. You just can't afford to buy all those. Like, why?
No. Unless you're certain guys, like, you know, I didn't buy the Rope Runner 2, or, you know, the Rope Runner Pro.
Yeah, the Pro, the new one.
End of September. Right. And 3 guys that I respect and that are on Instagram and that are ambassadors for Gap Arbor Supply were like, how can you be an ambassador of Gap Arbor Supply? And how can you do these videos and podcasts and not own a rope?
I ain't made them money.
Or pro, you know? And I'm like, dude, I got expenses as a company, you know? I can't just go buy all these pieces of equipment. But that being said, I do have the rope wrench, I have the Akimbo, I have the Rope Runner Original and the Rope Runner Pro. And I'm about to get a Zigzag.
You haven't used the Zigzag consistently yet?
I've climbed on it a few times, but I don't own it. So you know what? Let me get through the ads.
Yeah, get through your
and then we'll get into that a little bit. So along with gaparborsupply.com, of course, we have weaverarborist.com, which I'm really excited to be working with and trying to produce more product for them, more innovative stuff that's coming out and more relevant to the industry. Now, that being said, they have a lot of interesting product that they offer that's very viable and very good. It's just a lot of people don't know about it. And a lot of it's like bags and things. And I really, really, really love their Pro Cool pads for my Buckingham spikes. Those things, they're like a replacement for the Buckingham Big Bucks. You know, the big buck pads that go up, the big tall ones that go on top.
Yeah, are they the leather one, like the oversized leather ones with the 2 sets of straps on top?
No, this is an oversized leather one. Oh, that's the big bucks, yeah. But the Pro Cools are the same kind of shape, but they have an wicking and airflow material in them.
Oh, okay.
They're much lighter, and they're so cool on my legs. Like I
don't think I've seen those before.
Buckhams. And they have the Velcro.
I'm gonna look that stuff up real quick here while you're talking.
No, you're fine. So weaverarborist.com has some really good stuff, and I'm so glad that they're helping keep the show going as well. We have arbshirts.com. Don't forget to go check out arbshirts.com. If you go to menu down to topics, you can pick out Elevated Office Podcast, or Elevated Office, I think is what he has it as. And any of those designs are designs that I actually designed. And if you buy those shirts, I get a little bit of money back as commission on that. And then also just senditsols.com. You can go buy light bars. Man, I wasn't coughing until I started talking to Josiah.
I have that effect on people.
You can buy light bars. You can buy, I think he has Archer chain there that he sells, which is a little bit more budget chain. And he also has some clone saws that are legal, completely legal clone saws that are the Farmer Tech. So they're based on the out-of-date production of steel and things, which actually heard really good things about those as well. Plus he has in-house, he works closely with a guy, I should say, for doing total saw building, porting, polishing, high compression, all that kind of stuff. So
some of the best value too on some of that from what I've seen. The West Coast guys charge a little more for those services.
Yeah. And he does, he's really, really affordable for what he's doing.
Yeah, definitely. If you need a big beefy saw all ready to rip for quite a bit less than what it would be to buy for one brand new, that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I think he said that if I remember correctly, the porting and polishing and gasket delete on like a 2511T is right at the $300 and something range.
Well, and those 2511s, if I recall, they're about $400. So that's, brings your whole total saw cost to being a little less than or maybe just a little bit more than what a 200 or 201 would be new but you'll have a ripping little saw that's much lighter. Yeah. Those things are tiny.
And it's nimble for pruning.
Right. Like very narrow.
A lot of guys are actually putting the carving bars on them.
Mm-hmm, with the little tight nose.
For that like fine pruning, get in there a little bit better.
Well, and the narrower kerf too just makes all the difference if you can get that. I don't know if they have that for the Echo saws.
They do. You can buy a Panther bar with a quarter pitch.
Yep.
And it's
makes such a difference.
43 gauge. Yeah.
Yeah. I would run the 193s with that. The thin bar. I'd put the stills, they put them on the pole saws, but I always swap that out with the 193, and I never even bought a 200 because it's a climb saw. Yeah. They don't always survive.
No, I'm running, I've got a 200 or 201. Mm-hmm. I like the 201 specific. Where are you at on the West Coast?
I'm NorCal, so I'm northeast of the Bay, about 2 hours up in the foothills.
Okay, so you're up in the foothills. What's your max altitude you work at approximately?
I mean, I'll get up to Tahoe once in a while, so it's 8,000 feet. But
okay,
most of the time I'm between 1,000 and 4,000.
Okay, so for like me, I'm at 5,700 here where I live because I'm at the base of the Rockies, and then I get up to like Ridgeway, Telluride, Ouray area. And those are some of them at 8,000-9,000 feet. But
I'm afraid of heights as it is. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm doing all this education stuff and why I'm like diversifying. I don't want to keep climbing. From day one, I was afraid of heights.
Really?
And as I'm going about 6 years now, full time. And it's kind of, my tolerance has gotten better. So I don't get that like anxiety that I have to kind of have to hyper focus. I'm ADD. So as long as I can hyper focus, I can kind of forget that I'm at height. But that anxiety started hitting at like 25, 30 feet at first. And then over the years, that's kind of worked away to where I'm pretty much good up to about 60 or 70 now.
Yeah.
But anything beyond that, it's still like it's still a work to be able to focus well.
Really?
When I'm up in the tree.
I'm kind of the opposite, unfortunately.
That's not so safe.
Yeah, it gets like I make so, man. The problem is we could talk for hours, right?
Right.
But so like I get to a point where I don't come. I've only been climbing. What a lot of people don't know, and I try not to hide it because I don't want anybody to come to me and think I'm like the expert on all things climbing. Right? I'm not.
Right. Sure.
I don't claim to be. I've only actually been doing tree climbing for around 3.5 years right now.
Oh, okay.
I did bucket work and stuff. I've been working with trees for a long time, like felling, whatever. But I have a background in work at height with cranes. I used to install 100+ foot signs for like restaurants on the side of the interstate.
Yeah, okay.
Like pylon signs and things. And so you're in a crane, you're hanging in a bucket, or you're tied onto the ball, and you have 100-foot long cabinet that's 60 foot or 30 foot tall, depending, that's swinging in the wind, and you're pushing it and trying to get it to sit on the bolts.
To peg it, stick a bolt or whatever.
Right? And then I also used to rock climb boulders with no gear, just free climbing it, and have pads at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So, and before all that, I used to skateboard and BMX bike. And
so you are one of those adrenaline junkies who got into the industry because it appealed to that part of you, huh?
Well, not really. It's kind of weird. Like, I got into it because it made sense to me, and the crew that I was contracting to before, I felt like I could just be a bit safer if I did the work myself.
Yeah, I know that. I know what that's like.
Does that make sense? Like,
oh yeah.
And I saw a lot of problems using the bucket. Like, everybody out here, there's very few climbers where we live because it's why, like down here in the valley where we live at 5,700 feet, it's kind of wide open, high desert plains. And we have a lot of like really big willows. Like, I've climbed a willow that was 103 feet at the tips.
What?
Yeah.
A willow.
A weeping willow.
Those things are nasty.
And it had probably a good 65-foot canopy on it.
Oh, easily.
And I mean, the trunk of it was probably 9 foot in diameter, right? And then so the tendency is to pull a lift or a bucket truck across their yard and then go to town on it, right?
Heck yeah.
What I've found is that a lot of guys cut holes into the tree. And I don't mean they cut big gaping holes in the tree, but they cut extra branches out trying to make the bucket go where they want. So they're adding extra wounds to the tree that 100-and-something-year-old willow doesn't need to begin with.
Right. Well, and I mean, the willows, they're a little bit limited in lifespan anyway.
Right.
But right, you want to kind of maintain as much of that's good wood as you can at that point, because it'd be a chore to deadwood a tree like that. They get nasty.
Yeah, and aesthetically, I can see where the bucket entered.
Right.
They might not be able to notice as much, but I can. Plus, for whatever reason, they don't bury irrigation lines very low out here. I mean, very deep.
Really?
It's like,
despite the cold, huh? They're not buried
every year.
Jeez.
They pay somebody to come by with a big compressor, like a pull behind, like you'd use for an air spade. And they blow out all their irrigation system, but they're only buried like 18 inches.
Huh. So like every winter they go and vacate it, get all the water out, and then well, I suppose that's one way to solve that.
Yeah. So what happens is a bunch of my clients have had guys with bucket trucks come in, and it's one thing when the truck comes in empty, but if it's like an arborist bucket truck, like a lot of the guys out here have bought the out-of-date Asplin trucks. So it's the bucket boom crane thing with
a big box on the back, and they're pulling a chipper. And
well, you start loading that thing down with wood and chips and then driving back across the yard over 18-inch deep irrigation lines. What happens?
Yeah, right. Especially in the winter.
Right. You crush stuff. Quick. So me climbing has actually gotten me a lot of business out here because I do fine pruning and on big trees, and I don't have buckets coming in and out of their yard. So
well, I mean, don't mean to give away your marketing secrets there, but there's something to be said for arborists marketing themselves as a more higher tier tree service, because we are on a lot of ways. And if, I don't know how good everyone can judge their own. Well, we're not always great at self-assessment, but the reality is a good arborist is worth so much more, especially a good climbing arborist, worth so much more than any tree crew with a bucket in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah. And so
market that way is great.
And you're not giving away anything. I tell all my secrets. There's so much work here that if if there were 5 good arborists in town, there's like, in my opinion, and I don't mean, I try very hard not to be an arrogant person because I don't think I have any reason to be an arrogant person. But honestly, currently, there's like 2 companies that I think are qualified in town, and I'm one of them.
Really? How big is your town?
So the town is like, well, the county is like land size is really big, right? It's like
sure. Pretty
4
rural
hours
area,
driving north to south and probably 3.5 east to west.
Yeah, okay.
But there's probably less than 100,000 people in the whole county.
Okay.
And our town size, it keeps growing so rapidly. Everybody from California is selling property and moving out here because it's so cheap, relatively.
Yeah, relatively.
Yeah, I mean, I can't hardly afford. We rent right now because it's so expensive, and that's with me doubling my sales this year over last year, and I'm still like, But that being said, it's growing quite a bit. So here in town, immediately, we probably have a good 60,000.
Okay, well, that's a big sized town.
Yeah,
might be worth heading out that way. I'm looking at getting out of California.
If you ever want to come climb for me, man, I'm looking for a climber.
I'll keep that in the back pocket. That might be something to do.
Yeah, I'm dude. It's so hard to find good quality guys out here.
Yeah, I mean that's same as the case everywhere. And we were talking a little bit earlier. Mountain Enterprise, PG&E. California's fires are just ridiculous, and so as a result of that, lots of the insurance companies are basically dropping residential clients, a huge percentage of them all over the foothills, especially where I live, because I'm not 40 minutes away from where that Paradise fire was that burned the whole town down.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, my home insurance that I just got in January is dropping me, and I'm going to have to find something else. And the California Fair plan is kind of a doozy and really expensive. And so it's creating an interesting, huge spike in demand that it's not going to last forever. Eventually we'll get a handle on the residential tree situation, but not anytime soon. Tree work's just too expensive. There's too many retired communities. There's too many old timers who live up here in the foothills who've just, even though the areas have gentrified, they're either retired or they're working a set job that they can afford their house now, but they could never possibly move. So there's way more demand than there is competent workers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't possibly, like, you just can't get the work done fast enough.
Yeah.
And so it's such a poorly managed forest because of, not 100 years ago, the entire foothills all was just cut to rolling green hills. I mean, it's all dense forest now, but it was rolling green hills because of the gold rush. They just cut every tree down and filled the mines with it. So it's really kind of a wild mix of things that have just created quite the market for tree work. But that being said,
it's always unique. Well, I mean, out here, so and this is local market pricing. Okay. Right. Average day work here in the Montrose area, not in Telluride. Telluride's a different thing. It's a resort town.
Right. A little higher.
Has a house there. Right. It's all in a very steep mountain, so lots of crane work goes on up there because just access is almost impossible. And because the town and the exclusive community up there are so particular, which they're trying to keep a certain class of people in.
Right.
You have to build in fines because you're going to get a blocking the road fine or just something stupid.
Right. You got to count on those sort of things.
Yeah. It's just how it is. So here, like $1,500 to $2,000 a day, $2,200 a day for a basic crew. Now you can charge more sometimes if you have like 6 guys, 3 climbers and 3 groundies on the, what I mean, and you're doing something. But let's just say like a 3-man crew at somewhere between $1,500 and $2,200 a day.
Yeah.
Pretty fair, right? But on the high end. But I'm fighting against, like all of us, the guy who used to work for Asplin, doesn't know how to actually prune a tree. He just knows how to hack it.
Right. Can run a chainsaw and has got the guts because he's watched enough guys sit in a bucket.
Yeah. And he climbed for Asplin, so he still thinks that pruning climbing is with spurs.
Right.
And he has gotten too old to climb anymore, so he runs his Asplin truck that leaks hydraulic fluid all over the driveway, and he charges $500 a day.
Right.
And you're like,
right.
how but that's where marketing comes into play.
It's a huge aspect of, and what I found that the biggest, absolutely the biggest single factor that separates people who do really well and people who are constantly trying to catch up from the last thing that happened is managing client expectations.
Yeah.
The person who can go out there, whoever's doing the bids, whoever's interacting with the client initially, if they can manage the expectations of the client so that their goal, what the client wants is clearly established, what it's going to look like when it's done is clearly established, and then that information gets conveyed effectively to the crew such that the crew does a little bit more than what the client expects. That will leave people happy every time. And even if things go a little bit wrong, they're usually still thrilled because virtually everyone expects something crazy to happen because you're doing crazy stuff. Like tree work is big. It's scary. It's visual. It's intimidating. We have the advantage of that very few like random homeowner people look at that thing at the tree and think, oh, I can do that. And that, I don't know how contractors make a living because so many homeowners can just be like, well, I could fix it myself, but I'd rather pay someone. And so they're going to, find someone who can do it cheaply. But someone looks at a big hazard tree and they don't think that. They think, I don't know how on earth they're going to do this, but it needs to go. And so we show up, manage expectation. Look, we're going to bring this down. It's going to cause some damage to this landscaping and that landscaping. We should be able to protect this tree that really matters to you. We should be able to protect your lawn and your, so and so. And then when you're done and you manage to protect a few of the things that you said you'd probably destroy, they're stoked. They're thrilled. Like it works out great.
Well, I tell my clients honestly, so like you get that feel, you're just out of the price range, or it's not as important to them to pay the extra for your quality, and they know your quality, right? Yep. Like next door, man, it's actually kind of funny because I'm on next door. I don't really do a whole lot with promoting on next door, but I like to kind of know what's going on.
Sure.
And there's been a couple of times that my name has come up on next door for tree work, my company, and I get an alert. And it becomes this battle between me and the other guy in town who I think is quality as well.
Right.
And it's all these people promoting us. Oh they came out and did this awesome job, and Eric came out and did this awesome job, and Eric's a real artist, and the other one
just warm your heart a little bit on the inside.
and I'm like, I'm just sitting there kind of shaking my head because I'm like, honestly, he's just as qualified. He's more qualified in some cases than I am.
Well, that's just it. Is there are a lot of people. I mean, around here, there's some 300 tree companies in my county, and there's probably 20 who would do a great job at most any tree that needs to come out.
Yeah.
Maybe less. If you eliminate companies with half the employees smoking on their lunch break, then you probably are down to about 5. But still, either way, like most of those guys will do a decent job too.
Yeah, and that's it. And so like I just tell people, look, if you can't afford me, just make sure whoever you hire has insurance, at least at minimal. Make sure that company can prove to you they have insurance. I don't care that you're not going with me. But and I'm real big about not talking bad about other companies.
Totally.
I will tell them that there are some companies to watch out for in town. They need to do their research, but I won't name them because I don't think that's fair.
I'll name them, but only the 1 or 2 that I happen to know have a reputation for like scamming the elderly or.
Scamming's different. These guys aren't really scamming as much. They're just
or not following through with what they say, I suppose.
So there is one guy in town that he's kind of on the border, but everybody kind of knows who he is. So what he does is he charges, like I told you earlier, really cheap prices.
Super low.
So like this guy got a notice from the city saying that his elm trees were overshadowing the sidewalk and the ice wasn't melting. And so he had to have them trimmed back so that sunlight could get in on the public sidewalk and thaw out, right? Because it was a hazard. All right. So he has me come out and do a bid. He has this other guy come out and do a bid. The other guy bid. So these are 2 elm trees that are like 4.5 foot in diameter at the base.
Mm-hmm. Siberian elms. Monster elms.
Yeah. So probably 55, 60 foot tall max, but they had a good sprawling canopy over the neighbor's porch and shade cell and things that could easily
beautiful trees.
right?
Yeah.
And he had the guy come out, and the guy was kind of gruff because he's known for being that way. He's like, yeah, this tree, da, 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 and writes a scribble down and gives him a bid. And it's, I want to say it was $1,600 for both trees to come down. Okay.
To remove
them. Yeah, both.
To remove them entirely.
Yeah. Take haul wood and everything. Yeah. And I go out there, and I didn't know the pricing at the time. I didn't care. I told him, you don't show me the pricing, because I'm not going to give you a cheaper bid just because you show me pricing, right? I don't do that.
Yeah.
So I told him it'd be $1,600. I told him $1,800 a tree.
Yeah. Which
right,
would
for me
still be fair.
Yeah, for me, that's what it cost.
Yeah.
And he gave me the sad story. I could tell he wanted to use me. He gave me the sad story about not having money and that. And I was like, dude, this is dangerous work. It's going to take me days of my life to haul all this wood out of here. Right? You have a fence down here that we have to either tear down or not damage, or no, it's not. This is what it is. And the guy went with the cheaper guy. But you know what? The guy came out, was on the job, crushed his sprinkler system, I was told, with his bucket truck, ran over some yard ornaments that he could have just picked up and moved. He put
it's painful.
It's huge divots in the yard, right?
Yeah.
Didn't bring any what's that called for
like plywood or those big pads or whatever.
Yeah,
for
nothing, right? Ended up spending a day and a half working on the chipper truck instead of doing work. Gets the trees all down except for like the main stem and like 6-foot stubs coming out on all the main branches.
Right, where it's too big to pick up with a bucket truck.
Yeah, so like, no, they're still standing.
Right. And you can't just, it's not a crane, you know?
Yeah, no. So but he just picks up all the equipment and takes off. Leaves the fence dismantled for 2 weeks. Won't return any calls, but shows up 2 weeks later and finishes the job.
Wow. Jeez.
And of course he demanded 50% down up front.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he's freaking out about it the whole time too.
Right. Ugh. So, and the guy has an MO of doing that. And the best I can figure is that he's undercharging so much that when he gets that job, he does a little bit of work. And when he runs out of money, he goes and does another job that he sold for a little bit to get more cash in the pocket, because he gets that 50% down. And then he goes
could be. I don't know. It's all sketchy though. It's sketchy. Yeah. I like to tell clients if they ever say, "Oh, I got a bid for for $1,000 less now." Oh, great! You should go with that person, and I'll walk away.
Yep. That's it.
It's just not worth it. It's not worth the bargaining.
But yeah, I tell a lot of my clients, look, go get other bids if you want.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid, because this is my bid.
Yeah, right. It's not something worth bargaining about. You just, this is my price. You don't want to be the cheap person. If someone's looking for the cheap person, I don't want to work for that person. Yeah. They're like just the worst clients.
Well, I vet my clients too. I'm
on the phone. Oh yeah. There's a lot to that for sure.
If you're going to give me this much of a hassle, why do I want to work for you? Because I got enough hassle with my crew and the tree itself. I don't need you adding in. Right.
Yep.
So what's good is that it's gotten to a point now that, for me at least, I'm becoming recognized for my talents in the tree, industry here.
Yeah, doing a good job.
And a lot of people are calling me, and they're not even looking at other bids. It's just like,
yeah, that's where it's at. You got to be known for doing good.
It's you.
Yeah, so, and that's just the way to go.
Yeah, and I've been booked out around 12 weeks all season.
Dang, all right, good for you, man.
So it's been nice. But it takes. So all that being said, me and Josiah are talking about this and whatever, but it's not easy. It takes work and learning how to promote yourself the right way, figuring out what makes you different than the people in town. Right.
Painful, consistent, religious honesty, consistency, doing what you say, saying what you're going to do. Yep. I like to under promise, over deliver. It's not rocket science, but with that kind of consistent application, integrity, like it's really, that's how it is in any small town when it comes to the service industry, whatever it happens to be. If you can just be honest, be integrous, do what you say. And a big part of that is having the client expectations managed so that what you say and what you think you're going to do is the same as what the client thinks you said and thinks you're going to do. Because that probably virtually all of my issues with clients and issues with where I, ended up being under or not making the profit that I needed to make on a job is almost always because the client was under the impression I was going to do something different than what I was under the impression I was going to do.
And that's a challenge.
It's hard. That's really tricky.
Because as an art, so where I run into this more than anything, like a removal is pretty simple. It's either the tree is there, then it's gone. Unless you break something, they pretty much don't care how you do it as long as.
Well, around here, it's not so simple because number one, it's so expensive that we very often separate out like removing the materials from actually removing the tree. So very often we'll remove a tree and leave everything down, or we'll remove a tree and chip the branches and leave the chips on site.
So I do that too.
We might broadcast one sometime, and then bring a truck and dump it somewhere else another time, and all those things actually make a really big difference in the time and effort it takes to pull the job off. And if that's not all discussed ahead of time and pretty clearly detailed out, that can be the difference between a 1-day job and a 2-day job.
Yeah, or a 3-day job, depending.
Or a 3-day, yeah, right.
Right. Or stump grinding versus not, because some people, when they talk about removal of a tree,
right, they have in their mind you're going to grind the stump and everything.
Yeah. So one thing I do is I ask what their purpose of grinding the tree, having the tree removed is, and I start to discern what they're saying. Like, so if they're like, oh, well, this tree is going to be removed because we're going to put a patio there. I'm like, so are you needing the stump ground too?
Yeah. And they're asking good questions.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's an extra charge.
Yep. Getting clarity on all those little details.
Right. So because you can run into a problem with that as well. And like you said, the debris. Now we're taking the debris, but my chipper is a whatever size chipper. In my case, it's a 9-inch chipper. So everything over 9 inches, I have to leave because the chipper doesn't run it. So do you want all the branch wood that's over 9 inches? Because that's a lot of wood.
Right.
And
then the tree always looks so much bigger once it's on the ground too. And you're like, oh yeah, leave it there. We'll use it for firewood. It's like, okay. And
you're for like a decade.
4-foot diameter oak rounds that are, 1,000 pounds around. And they're like, I can't move those. It's like, yeah, I didn't think you were going to, but you said, well,
I've actually had a couple of clients that, they had me do a job like elm tree or cottonwood that's 4.5 foot in diameter, and the tree comes down, and they're like, "Oh yeah, just lay the stump over, the spar over, and we'll take care of it."
Yep.
And he pulls out like his little home light, 18-inch bar, and I'm like, "Okay." And then they're like, "Oh, somebody will take it. Somebody on Facebook or Craigslist
will pick it up for firewood."
Yeah. So 2 months later, I get called back. We can't get anybody to get this wood, and it's an eyesore.
Yep. Do you have a mini skid that you guys use?
No.
Don't wait. It's so worth it.
It'll have to be next year. But what I do have and what I did do recently is
you got to get on the list. Ditch Witch takes forever. They're like 2 months out before you even get it.
Yeah. I was thinking about the Toro with that extended height lift.
Oh, the big 3,000. Yeah. I mean, that's a full size skid steer though. I mean, like the size difference between it and the 1,000 is huge. I mean,
I'm talking about the ride-on. I thought the ride-on had that telescoping arm thing, so it would dump into.
So they've got 2 ride-ons. The 1000 XL, a tipping weight of about 3,000 pounds, and you can lift darn near 3,000 pounds with that. Like we really push that machine a lot, but its grapple keeps it really close to center mass, so it does an amazing job. That one you can ride on the back. There's no telescoping.
Yeah.
The 3000 XL it's 3 times as heavy as that. It's like a 9,000 pound machine.
Oh, wow.
It'll lift almost 3 times as much, but it's a footprint of like a full size skid steer.
Oh, okay. So it's a big boy then.
Yeah. And it's about 60K, 65K or something.
So what I have currently, because, so I've only been running my own company for about 2-3 years, 2.5 years now.
Which means you've been gone without a skid steer for about 2 years and a month too long.
I know, but I did buy a awful worst stump grinder in the history of stump grinders. Vermeer SC30TX.
I think I saw your picture of that with the forks. You put the forks on the end for moving some rounds around. Does that work all right?
Yes, I can pick up a 600 or 700 pound round easy.
That's awesome. That's really significant.
Yeah. So, I mean, for now it's working. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just, so one thing people will learn listening to my podcast, I'm not afraid to talk about expenses of my company, because a lot of people ask me, what should I know getting into?
That's super good information. Yep.
Well, the reality of it is you should know you're going to be broke. I mean, so, yeah. I mean, just to give you an idea, I run a 5x8 dump trailer with 4-foot extension sides on it, because I can take down most large trees here in 2 trailer loads with that.
Just as a trip trailer, right?
Chip and wood in it afterwards.
Oh, really?
I can get all the chips in it in one load almost always, and then dump all the wood in it as a second load. If it's a really, really big cottonwood, it might take 3 loads just for the trunk butt ends that are
right. Those things are big
because they're just massive. It's not, you just can't space fuel wise.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But that with the little auto crane I have on it that pulls up wood on log tongs has been a lifesaver. Right. And I have let's see, in that total setup, I got the auto crane for super cheap from some guy I just ran across. Never be afraid to ask people when you see equipment sitting in their yard, just stop and knock on the door. Hey man, I see you have an old auto crane out there. Are you doing anything with it?
You're talking about like something that's generally mounted in the back of a truck for like picking engines out, put it in the tailgate.
Got the electric hoist.
Yeah. Exactly. Just for picking up rounds, getting in the back.
Yeah. So you got to look through I got
the stinking ditch witch, man. Okay, here's my pitch. So we've been using it for the last couple of years. We had the Toro 1000. That's the one. So I'm a foreman for a company, First Impressions. Yeah. I've been with them for almost since I started. I've kind of just been running their crews. Probably half of my full-time working, I just run their crew. And he's got the Toro 1000. I just bought the Ditch Witch, the SK 800 with a weight kit, which puts it at basically to the same machine. Just, I think the Ditch Witch has a much more thought out construction, easier maintenance, less maintenance. There's a few key features like better access to the engine compartment, easier to clean the radiator, just kind of that sort of stuff. Is a little nicer on the Ditch Witch. And we had a lot of weird mechanical glitches on our Toros over the last couple of years. Of course, we beat the heck out of them. So there's that. But anyway, the efficiency we have on that. So when it's me, we've got one guy who runs the Dingo really well, the Toro machine. And then usually we'll have one or maybe 2 other guys on the ground. So a total of 4 guys on the job. And we will do 10 full size 120 foot pines that are 24-inch diameter. We could do 10 of them in a day, all chipped, bucked, whatever, without too much trouble. Big oak trees, we'll just do a bunch of them. We can be sending out loads, like full trailer loads of chips and wood, all like 3 or 4 loads in a day, no problem. We're just waiting for the trailer to come back in between loads. Like the amount of work you can do is unreal. What's that?
I don't need excuses to spend money.
No. Here's the other thing. So the Dingo, I just got the Ditch Witch that I just got. It was $32,000 after tax, 0 interest, 2-year loan. It's $1,000 a month. It's cheaper than an employee by far, and it can do the work of 2. No one's lifting stuff with their back. No one's going to get injured.
No, I agree.
Can the chipper with it. We'll set that thing up and just shove food in, shove the big branches in there. No problem. And I mean, you're feeding things in it, and you've got that 9-inch chipper, and the grapple on that will grab and just crush branch unions that would get it stuck. So instead of having to pull the saw out and do that, you just back it out, grab it, crush it, shove it in again. It is so efficient.
Man, I know. It's going to have to be next year purchase though. I mean, because think about it. I've got less than $10,000 in my stump grinder with that attachment addition.
Sure.
So it's not a mini skid. I'm not saying it is, but for $9,500 or $9,800.
I mean, that's a great piece of equipment, and it's going to make you money because you can charge an extra fee for stump grinding, and you can do your stump grinding.
So eventually,
on this thing's like $6,000.
Yeah,
I don't have it yet. We don't do any stump grinding, but we could. And then I was pushing around 3,000-pound chunks of oak in my yard the other day, just rolling them up a hill.
Yeah,
I can pick up a 1,200-pound log and move it around as much as I want.
That's awesome. I mean, my max is probably around 600 pounds because of the leverage of those forks out the front and no weight kit on it. But with the platform, I can manage it now because I'm standing on the back. It balances out. And
I was gonna say, you must have built that platform, huh? Because it was kind of a walk behind unit before.
It was, and it still is. You can fold it up and latch it if you need it.
Nice, kind of like the Bobcat, the MTs.
Yeah. So it's just something I put. I mean, it cost me $600 for the forks to be built and that, and
worth it.
And since I had bought the machine, and it was like, I don't remember, $9,000 something for the stump grinder, and it was such an awful machine. I was like, there's potential with this.
Make it worth something here.
It's got to be worth something, right? And so I made it into something practical.
Yeah.
It gets the job done grinding, but it's not a great machine. The Toro STX26 is twice the machine that SC30 is. And it's small.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Toro, they seem to do some things right.
Yeah. Well, all of them, right? Like they have certain things, and I mean, I don't know. One of the guys
they're worth their weight in gold, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You just can't. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing stuff without it anymore. We just find so many ways to use that thing now. It's great.
Well, I am looking at it at 40 years old. I'm not keen on picking up 210-pound logs and.
Oh gosh, no! Don't do that to yourself. Don't do it to your employees either. They'll love you for it.
Well, I don't. I try real hard to. I'm really particular about safety, which is one of the things that actually sells my business to clients.
Yeah, totally.
Because nobody wants a catastrophic accident on their job first, and second, nobody wants my equipment sitting on their job for days because one of my guys hurt himself and now I can't finish the job.
Yeah, I tell my guys, and this is true. I'll never forget the moment. So my brother worked with us for a while as a groundsman, and he's the best rope guy we've got. But I remember the first time he was like walking underneath me when I was up in the tree, and just the feeling I had in my chest, imagining dropping something on him. And I just know that the day I like majorly injure one of my guys, or I get severely injured, is the day I quit the career. Like, I'm just not going to do it. I'll be done at that point.
I can't say that.
Yeah. The industry, or like the job itself, isn't that attractive to me. Yeah. Like, I love that in this industry, there are people who are super passionate about doing trees. Like August, I love his made for this vibe where, and I think it brings out the best of them in a lot of ways. I think of Fannerman too. Like, he's just super into doing excellent tree work, being an excellent climber.
Yeah, Stillborn, Still Sober, Monkey Max, all those guys.
Treason, all those guys. Yeah, they really love what they do, and that's awesome. I'm all about that enthusiasm. I like solving problems. I love, like, I see physics vectors when I'm doing rigging. Like, I that's just how I see it.
Me too.
And so I love the intellectual challenge of it. And the fact that there's always something on the line, like you have to, there's your skin in the game. There's some risk. There's some I enjoy that to some extent. As far as actually doing the tree work, I don't like it. It's not fulfilling to me that much. And I've had it's really not. And I've the last couple of years really been trying to explore what is it that makes me feel alive, and to kind of fill in that void, because really I feel a little bit more like demoralized after spending weeks doing nothing but tearing down beautiful trees for the sake of safety. Yeah. Like, they're beautiful and they're majestic and I love it. And we do so many removals because it's the only thing that makes sense. And then I come home and I take some old piece of wood from some tree I cut down 3 years ago and make a beautiful little table. And I just feel so good about it. I just love it. And
I think you need to come out here, because what I do is I actually do very few removals.
Oh, okay.
I do some removals, and sometimes they turn into removals when I didn't want it to.
Right. You find some big hole of rod up inside.
like here, what we deal with is cottonwoods are very brittle.
Yeah, they're nasty.
They're not great trees as it is. But here in some of the neighborhoods that are like neighborhoods that were built mid 80s, early 90s, they were nice neighborhoods at the time. And they're still decent neighborhoods, but now they've become renter neighborhoods. So like the owner has moved on to a nicer house or a different state, whatever. And they don't pay the money for the house, right? They're not going to maintain the trees on the property. They're not going to spend any money on this.
Right.
Eventually a lot of them go into foreclosure. And they sit on the market in foreclosure forever trying to get all the legal stuff put together. So out here, we're in the high desert. If it's in foreclosure, who's paying the water bill to have the irrigation on? Nobody.
No.
Right. So
tree gives it a shock. All of a sudden, it's not getting the water it's used to, and they're just dropping dead.
Yeah. And so like we did this one tree, had a couple of like serious issues with it where Zephyr was actually climbing it, which was probably good because he's a lighter guy than I am. He's probably 5'6" maybe. And he's like 150 pounds.
Ooh, little guy.
Yeah, littler guy. He was out on a big branch. I mean, the branch was still like, a good 6 inches in diameter. And he had it tied off and everything. And we were like doing a tip tie and a butt tie and kind of trying to balance it a little bit, but he couldn't get too far out. So it was the best we could do, try to get off the house. He made his undercut with just a wedge, a face cut. And he had it slightly on the side angle of the branch so that it would swing
trying to
away.
get to swing away. Yeah.
Yeah. But I kid you not, he cut through maybe 3/4 of an inch and it just snapped off.
Oof. Yeah, that's cottonwoods too. They're real brittle like that, very snappy.
When we looked at the heart though, because the tree had gone into shock because of lack of water, all the heartwood in the branch was dead and rotted all the way down. Only the sapwood was still alive. So it was full of it had leaves and it was.
Yeah, it looked big and strong and beautiful.
Yeah. But it had gone into those years of severe drought for so long that it was actually eating away all the stored nutrients in the tree.
Yeah, I'm surprised that would even survive all that long. I mean, those cottonwoods generally need a pretty consistent stream of water. They just not really a dry season plant.
And that one had done about 5 years without any consistent water.
Wow.
And it was a big tree. It was probably a good 85 foot tall.
That's big for a cottonwood.
Yeah. Well, out here they get to be around 110.
110? I have never seen a 100-foot cottonwood.
Yeah. They can get that high here, but it's not, wild. I mean, that's tip and it's not super common. Most of them are around 70 to 80 at their max. Depends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
out of the wind.
Yeah, it just depends. So we had to remove that tree because there was no way that I felt we could make it safe.
Right. And yeah, and that's the call you got to make as an arborist, and you hope you got someone who's gonna deal reasonably with you and let you charge them a little bit more to do that if necessary. I mean, a lot of times a real thorough pruning can be just as expensive as a removal, and it's not that big of a difference.
Well, that was it for us. We talked about it. She wanted a real thorough pruning, and we were like, look, this is what we've left with. She's like, well, I'm fixing this house up. I want to be safe. So just remove it if that's what it needs. And that's what we did.
There you go.
My satisfaction. So what we were talking about that got onto this topic, my satisfaction in the tree world is not just removal trees, like some guys like that adrenaline drop in big chunks. And my adrenaline is getting out to those very hard to reach tips, getting it all pruned and thinned. And when you step out of the tree looks natural and even.
Yeah, right. Where you almost can't tell you're in there, but it's just you capture the essence of the tree. There really is. There's something special to that.
Yeah. And you've set this tree up for future prosperity.
Yep.
To me, it's like, it's almost more about the tree than it is anything else. And
it's great to get to do that. It really is. I mean, that's that. It's capturing a creative energy rather than a destructive energy. We have these live oaks out here, these, not a coastal live oaks, but there are a couple different types of live oaks, and they tend to get a lot of interior deadwood and just gets really dense and witch broomy looking on the inside. Mm-hmm. And so it almost looks half gray, half green, even on a very live, beautiful tree. And those just can be so spectacular when you pull a little bit of patches out on the outside canopy so the sun penetrates a little bit and clean out all the inside, and they can just spectacular.
And you get those sun flares coming in.
Yep. Oh man. I mean, it can really be, and those are the best to climb too, because they're so strong. You know, I can be swinging all around the tree on a 2.5-inch branch and feel totally solid, knowing that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it just flexes and holds for days. I mean, that's the fun. I mean, those are the best days when I get to just enjoy that kind of pruning and then leave it all on the ground and not have to clean it up, because these are the worst.
we don't have any oaks. We only have so we have some maples, but they're silver maples and red tip maples, so they're not very strong. They're pretty bitter.
Yeah, a lot of bad unions in those things too.
Yeah, we have some box elders. Once again, not great. We have so locust trees, which look almost like a walnut. We have honey locust.
Yeah,
those
can
are
be a really
strong.
good word. Yeah, those are solid, but they're thorny usually, right? Or
the honey locust, the black locust.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got black locust more around here.
Yeah, so but those are, once again, you can be hanging off. You know, I'm 230 pounds with all my gear on, and I can be on a branch that's only 1.5 inches and not really even sweat it.
Not even be worried about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we have ash trees that do pretty good. If
those
they've
are
been
solid
maintained.
too.
Yeah, if they've been maintained. A lot of people out here don't maintain their ash trees, so you get a bunch of those really long, extended, and like curving down.
Yeah, real droopy branches.
Yeah, and that makes them hard to prune because there's no good tie-in to get out on that arch going over, you know.
And they always end up looking funny too.
Yeah,
because you inevitably have to make what looks like a heading cut somewhere along that branch, even if you kind of planned it right.
Yeah, it's hard. So I don't. Yeah, not ideal in those.
Not crazy about those.
No. If people keep them pruned every couple of years like they should, then you can structure them and they look beautiful. But most people don't spend that money, right? I mean, that's just...
Nope. Such is how it is. You're always redoing either some poorly pruned cheap job, and now you're the expensive guy that they called in because it was so bad last time. I'm like, look, this is going to be a multi-year process to get this.
That is me.
Yeah, exactly.
I get those calls all the time. I've got.
You're dealing with the tree that's never been touched.
Yeah, I get a lot of this guy started it, and I'm like, oh, that means the price just went up 1.5 times.
Yeah, or at least the time it's going to take. Jeez.
Yeah. So, all right, I don't want to keep you on too long, but I do want to talk to you slightly about your video about the
the lanyards.
Yeah. So we got.
What was your thought about that? We're not going to describe it because hopefully everyone will who listens to this will go watch it. It's easy. It's a good watch.
I will actually put the link to the video in my description so that you guys can go just click on it. So now, very briefly, the description of it was is that Josiah took a steel core lanyard, a poison ivy.
It was poison ivy. It was a calamine, but yeah, essentially it's just an ivy rope.
And Tritech.
Sterling Tritech.
And he did cut test with a silky saw. Well, not on the steel core or the wire core,
right? Just
on the 2 rope lanyards. And then he did chainsaw test on all 3 of them. Okay, full body weight. He was in a tree, with a slack top tie to catch him, and he did them until he fell out. Which even impresses me more, knowing you're afraid of heights, that you are actually willing to.
I was only 6 feet off the ground. It wasn't exactly high there.
Yeah, but still, that's a little bit of a pucker factor for anybody.
A little bit. It was exciting.
Yeah. So, in all fairness, Josiah and I talked about this. He knows I'm not being critical of him. That's not the point. We're just. If you were,
it'd be okay.
Yeah, but we're just talking about the realities. When you're doing tests like that, it's hard not to be like extreme, right? You're extreme with the putting a chainsaw straight to it, full throttle, almost trying to cut it, right? That's the purpose. See what it takes.
Right.
Same thing with a handsaw, like really, cutting at it. And then you also, with your handsaw, actually cut it at it, like tapped it, slammed it down, the blade downward on the rope at angles and straight down.
Yeah,
Like
so
it
that
had
was
just,
the more interesting part of the test for me,
Mhm.
because I know that most of my contacts with the lanyard had been more with that type of
Yeah.
impact, where I'm just kind of whacking it a little bit here or there, and it mattered a lot how it came in contact.
Yeah. At an
And
angle versus straight down.
yep, and whether or not the teeth on the actual silky were either being pulled across it because that cut quickly, or if they were coming at an angle, then it was doing this. It was having a similar effect.
Yeah.
But a bouncing cut did almost nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So what was interesting to me about that is all that data was very fascinating for me, right? Because I'm an analyst. That's what I do.
Right, you're
But
looking close.
yeah, what was interesting to me though is that where I've noticed the biggest difference, right? Because I've used like Blue
The biggest
Moon.
difference in types of lanyards or
Oh
in
yeah, in
performance.
how the types of lanyards react,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've used Blue Moon, Poison Ivy. I've used Tritech, and now I'm using Tritech and Ring. Ring is Yale's red is no go lanyard,
Oh, okay.
where
I
it
haven't
has a
seen that
red.
yet.
Yeah, it's a red inner core,
Yeah, got a
and
red core.
if you cut it and you see red, it's unsafe to use. Is their
Yeah.
idea.
Huh.
So it's not quite as hard sheathed, right, as like the Tritech is.
Yeah, Tritech's got that dense. It's almost like the Teufelberger, like ecstatic sort of tight 32 strand weave.
Yeah. It's not that dense, but it's not quite as loose as like the Petzl lanyard rope that they use.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Because that stuff's almost too open and picks everywhere. I
It's like
hate
a
that.
16 strand, I
Yeah, it's
think, in that
awful.
Petzl lanyard, and it's big, so it's probably a 13 or 14 millimeter, but it's yeah, I mean, it definitely fluffs out.
Yeah, it picks on all the bark on the big trees
Yep.
that I deal with and stuff.
I
Right.
cut the Petzl rope out there and put Tritech in on both
Yeah.
of my Xeons because I climb the Xeons all the time.
Well, I have a Grillin or a Grion. Nobody
Yeah.
knows how to say Grion or Xeon. So I say Grillin and Zillin just so people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
But yeah,
right.
I have a Xeon and a Grion, and I did the same. I just instantly I bought the shortest lengths of rope I could, cut them off, and then just used the device. Right, I have no interest in their rope.
Yep.
But
Sorry, Petzl. I know it's not approved anymore. I'm gonna deal
yeah,
with it.
well, they only do that for the European CE rating anyway. So
Right, right.
what is interesting to me though is that when I've been using my lanyards and I've accidentally, so where I've come into most issue is not having a good tie-in point somewhere else and having to make a cut close to the lanyard, and it
Mm-hmm.
passes through and just barely nicks the lanyard.
Yeah,
Right.
especially on like a little top paneled saw. Like if you're going up a relatively vertical sparred tree or something and you're trying to cut nice and close, you're not leaving a bunch of nubs.
Exactly.
Totally.
Or if you're like, so with my handsaw, if I'm pruning cutting and I'm on a tip and that's the best union I can get my lanyard into to be solid, and
Yep.
I'm conscious it's close, so I'm trying real hard, but you still pass through just a little too much.
Yep.
It's your lanyard. You know
Just
what I
make it.
mean? And then another scenario is like you're saying, I'm using my top handle saw on the back side of a trunk, and I just barely come through, right?
Yep.
So what I have noticed though, and what I was wanting to just mention, is that definitely the Tritech in those situations where you're definitely controlling the saw more, trying to not let it come in contact, but it
Yep.
still makes contact, has reacted much better.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Definitely. Well, I've in practice, I've definitely noticed very light contacts. Not especially, I think part of what this test didn't do justice is a really, really sharp saw versus a slightly used saw.
yeah.
Because I wear the cut resistant gloves. I wear
Okay.
these ANSI, they're AS5,
Mhm.
ANSI 5 cut resistance. And I've actually hit my hand on a number of occasions, probably 3 or 4 times over the years, with a down spinning top panel saw chain. So like it was either on the pass through and I had let off the throttle, so it wasn't revved up,
Yeah.
but I've just kind of bumped my hand or like gotten shaken in the tree and had it come in contact a couple of times. And I've also done a full slash with my hand with my silky with those cut resistant gloves, and the fibers in there is very similar, if not the same, as the Tritech stuff on the outside.
Okay.
And that I've never been cut through those gloves with
Yeah.
anything. And so I know that stuff really makes a difference for a blade that's not super sharp.
Oh, interesting. I didn't really
like
know how much.
If you take a knife and try and cut through it, if your knife isn't razor sharp, it won't go
hard
through.
to cut those.
It's like really hard to cut
area, and you're trying to cut it off.
It just won't do it. But if you've got a razor blade, it'll cut through nylon just as fast as it'll cut through the other stuff. Like the razor doesn't care. It'll cut them both almost identically. Right. And I think that's kind of what we ended up seeing in that video, more than I was expecting.
Yeah. And so once again, I totally agree with your video, and I think everybody should watch it to know that you shouldn't feel overly safe. They're literally just a backup solution. And right. I mean, hopefully the idea is that they're there in case you cut your top rope by accident and right. you didn't touch them at all, right? They're your backup.
They should be in different positions. Like you should never have them together. I mean, that's kind of a common thing I see with beginner climbers on spar work, especially out here in the West Coast where we're dealing with all these really vertical trees. It's tempting to have your two tie-in points and just hold them together and advance them together and make your cuts with them sitting right next to each other. And it doesn't buy you much because if you're going to hit one, you're going to hit the other if they're lined up like that.
And so to be honest, I've had that happen too, especially like rigging. You know,
right.
You're trying to get your rigging together. You're trying to get everything set up with your sling and your block. You're trying
so you're not going to get trapped if you get pins, if it gets pinned, and you know, which one do you put on top of the rigging or underneath? Like there's quite the debate about that proper orientation of what that's supposed to be.
What's supposed to go on. And then if you have your mandatory escape rope, right? Your rappelling rope, and you have your waist lanyard, because usually if you're on a spar, you're at your back D-rings if you're like on any saddle, right? You're not on your front rigging plates.
Well, I mean, it depends on the person, but yeah. I pretty much never use those anymore.
I only use my front Ds.
Yeah, me too. I don't use the side ones at all anymore. Not since I've got the Turtle Burger saddle.
And so what happens though is that if you have your lanyard like down to get it away from your top tie rope for descent, emergency escape, then it's weird on you. It's pulling like kind of down on your saddle.
Super uncomfortable.
So you end up kind of putting them together because that's just where geometrically and, you know, it fits. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So what I have a routine now, obviously, but I always have my lanyard on at my waist height. That's the top thing. And then I'll have my choked off belaying immediate attachment point down around my knees somewhere abouts. And if I'm doing a bunch of spar work, what I'll do is I'll set it up. I'll usually go up the tree double lined because I can advance it ahead of me and I can be hanging from my top tie while I'm making cuts. And I belay until I'm too high, and then I'll switch it to a choked single line because I use devices like the Akimbo and the Rope Runner so that they can go kind of do either, and I just switch between them.
Yeah. And so real brief comment on that. If you guys haven't seen, I have a video out about it as well. I actually really like the Akimbo for DDRT.
Yeah, it works beautifully.
It works great.
If you don't have sap on your rope.
Yeah, so also I climbed when I did my first video on the Hakes versus the Arbortech boots.
Oh yeah.
So I spent a lot of money. I bought a pair of Hakes Protector Ultras. Yeah. And I bought a pair of Arbortech Scapholites.
Are either of those chainsaw protectant?
They are both.
They're both. Oh, okay. So I haven't seen the Arbortech ones that were chainsaw protectant. Those bolts just seem too heavy for me to deal with in a tree, but
they're actually not. You should really check. They're the Hakes. So far the Hakes are my preferred. But
we should put a link of both of those in your description. I'd be happy to check those out.
Okay, I will, because what's happening is currently I am trying to wear them every other day, one pair every other day.
Get a real good comparison.
Yeah, the challenge is the Hakes have a Vibram sole. That's very much like the Arbor Pro or the Arb Pro clip-in steps.
Yeah.
So it's that really soft gummy. Whereas the Arbortech boots have it's Vibram as well, but it's a much harder compound.
Yeah. So, it's amazing how different those are.
In the snow, I can't wear the Arbortechs because I slip and slide too much, especially if there's ice on the ground.
Yeah, you're saying so the harder compound just doesn't do well with the ice at all.
No, it's just like summer tires versus winter tires, right?
Sure. That hard stuff though works beautifully on like granite, on rock.
Yes.
Like it sticks so well.
It does. So what I'm doing is I haven't been able to wear the Arbortex the last few days because we got like 8-10 inches of snow. And now it's gotten to where it hasn't snowed in a few days, and it's getting that hard crunchy snow where it's melting a little bit and then it's packing. So I'm having to just wear the Hakes in the meantime, because I am not going to slip and fall on the job, just trying to prove which boot is best, right? They are both great boots, just so everybody knows. They both have pros and cons, right? But so what's really interesting about all of that is each of those pairs of boots changes the way that I climb.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And the reason is the Hakes don't have a rand around the top of the sole. It's just
you're talking about that rubber that sort of goes up a little bit, so you kind of can grip with the side of your toe.
Exactly, or on the inside of your arch of your foot, like up beside your ankle.
Yep.
You know, so
kind of like a mountaineering boot.
Exactly. The Arbortex have a full rubber rand around the whole bottom of the upper leather area.
Yeah.
Whereas the
Arbortex boot is like modeled after the old Scarpa Charmaz, or
it looks very similar. Yeah.
Summer mountaineering boots.
Yeah. And the Hakes don't have that though. So I tend to worry. I tend to worry more about not tearing up the cloth. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
What's interesting about all of that is that starts to determine how I place lanyards in a canopy, because of where I can aggressively
wedge your foot or not.
Right? But because the soles are harder on the Arbortex, then it also changes what branches, how steep they are, and how much I feel like I can monkey up it, versus the Hakes having a much softer sole and me monkeying up it easier.
Does that soft sole grip bark better then?
It does, definitely.
Okay. What about like mossy, slightly moist?
So I don't know. I don't get much moss out here because of where we live. But what I do get is I can climb the trees in the Hakes with snow on the branches and not worry too much.
Interesting. That's a big difference. Like that's fairly significant.
Yeah, but the Arbortex, it makes it like a snot fest. Right? So it is very interesting to me how it's working out. But it's the same kind of thing like we're talking about with the lanyards, like where you put what depends on the tools that you have and how you're using it. Because my old Buckingham saddle, there's no way I could have climbed a spar off of my front D's.
Not on one of those old like bosun seat saddles. I mean, that'd be so uncomfortable.
And that means that on your side D's.
Yeah, your flip line is going to be a little bit higher. There's going to be a little more interfering in with everything you're cutting, and a little more exposure to the chainsaw and things like that. Yeah. I mean, that all really plays a difference, plays a factor.
Yeah, and so if you get a chance, I really recommend you get some Yale ring rope.
Yeah, I'll have to
check that out.
Yep. I'm going to be due to make a couple new ones here.
Yeah, well, it's not quite as cut resistant or abrasion resistant as the Tritech.
What's the diameter on it?
I want to say it's 11 as well.
Okay. I wonder. I'm pretty sure with the Tritech, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it's the coating, the outside of it, and not the core that has the cut resistance. And I should mention actually, and I didn't mention this in the video, but it's worth noting that Tritech, the Technor on the outside of that is one of those aramid fibers that actually it doesn't hold up as well under flexing, repeated flexing tests. It doesn't hold up as well. It self-abrades is what that's called. But it is it's temperature resistant. So it can handle a lot more friction.
And on the outside.
And the reason that's a big deal, I mean, I'm sure you've had this happen. If you haven't, you will at some point. When you're rigging, on a couple of occasions, I've had my rigging line not land in the union, especially when I'm natural crotch rigging. I'm just kind of doing, a couple 100-pound branches or less, not real big stuff. I'll have the branch swing down and the rigging line come off of where it was mounted and end up running along your lanyard. Now that can be a pretty big issue, especially if you're new, if you're not good at, you got a lot going on. And one of the biggest challenges is making sure all the ropes are routed so that nothing's interfering with itself. Well, when you rig a piece and it swings and it moves and it doesn't move exactly how you predicted, and now all of a sudden your rope's running in a new place, you can have a rigging line running across your climb line and your lanyard at the same time, or just across your lanyard. And I've seen guys with their lanyards half melted through from one bad run. And that can happen quick. Point is, the Tritech won't burn, so that you're going to have the rope run right across your lanyard and have it be on you, but not melt through your lanyard. And that's kind of a big deal. It can be another, it's just one more bit of safety as far as the rope lanyards go.
Yeah, it's definitely a big deal. It's not something to play with. And that's what I was going to say. Not this December, but last year, I did a job, really underbid it. I wasn't really prepared for everything. I didn't realize it until I got there and started doing the work. Only thing I had with me to get the tops out, because I thought the lift, I actually did it out of a lift because it was so sketchy. Thought the lift would reach the very tops, and it wouldn't. So I had to take 30-foot tops. So this was a 95-foot tall tree, and it was over solar panels and over a beautiful wood deck, and it was just a nightmare. So the only thing I had on me was Scandier rope.
Oh, okay.
And so I used it as my rigging rope, which not ideal.
Not the worst. It's not ideal, but it's not the worst you could do. I mean, that stuff's pretty strong. It's about 9,000 pounds.
It stretches real bad. Yeah. But it's not ideal, right? But it wasn't like the end of the world that I used that rope for rigging. What was interesting, though, is that I did a bunch of natural crotch rigging with it. And one run, the friction burn on that rope was so bad. It was forever, never, even if I wanted to, which I would have never done anyway, never to be returned to be used as a climbing rope.
Oh, right. I mean? Yeah. Glaze is so hard. That's the one thing that I still don't really understand why, but the performance of the 24 strands, or even any of the double braids through natural crotch rigging versus the 16 strands, they glaze really easy. They glaze so much faster through. And it's actually why I've switched to my primary rigging rope for the trees. I use the notch gargoyle, I think. No, Sasquatch. I use the Sasquatch rope. It's
never even seen it.
Oh, you haven't heard of it? Oh, okay. Well, this is a good tidbit because I try not to rig big. If I can avoid it, I just don't generally. If I'm gonna rig really big, usually I've got 2 redirects that are metal, and so I won't rig big and natural crotch. It'll either be through metal redirects or it'll be just small-ish. Yeah. But I love this notch Sasquatch rope. It's bright green. It's got pink streaks in it. They made it as a hybrid climbing rigging line. It's kind of like an updated version of the old True Blue. It's beefier. Gotcha. It doesn't stretch as much. It holds up really well to natural crotch rigging, and it's got a breaking strength of around 9,000 pounds. Yeah. So it's quite a bit better than most of your standard climb lines. It's not quite like a full size rigging line. It's about the same diameter as the Nystron or something along those lines. Gotcha. About the same diameter. But it holds up really well to whatever you want to abuse it in, because it's a 16 strand stable braid rather than that double braid configuration, and it doesn't glaze as easily, which I was always surprised by. Yeah. In fact, I think the only time I glaze it on the Porter wrap.
Oh, really?
Not through the crotch.
I'm currently using I can't even remember. But it's a red and white Teufelberger rigging line.
Oh, Atlas probably.
Is it Atlas? It's really soft. It's got a good hand to it. It's
really supple, but it's got the pattern of a kern mantle looking rope.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's probably Atlas.
I've got that, and then I've got Samson Blue 5/8. I want to say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, True Blue or whatever.
Yeah, which I use. And then I've got a 3/4 inch bull rope from Samson. That's it's a bright orange, and just
some big beefy monster thing.
Yeah, I only use that when I'm using my Stein, the Stein 3001 with the winch on it to lower.
Yeah, the big crank.
Yeah, something like that, Other than that, I use the Teufelberger all the time. And dude, my favorite new tool for big-ish small rigging, if that makes sense, is the rigging.
Those like 4 to 1,000 pound. Oh, the rigging wrench. Oh, you got that one, huh?
Yeah, that's awesome. Like,
dude, I like that piece, but my problem is I don't, if I'm going to climb up, if I'm going to set a piece of hardware that's not retrievable, I'm just going to put a ring up there pretty much. Like if I have to, if I'm doing like littler stuff where I could say, so I go up, set a point, walk out the branch, rig some tips out, but I have to go back to that point before I reset, then that's where I like the rigging wrench. That's like, and especially if I'm keeping the rope with me, I've only got one groundy or something, like it's a really, we're split to the 2-part crew or something like that. Then it's great. Like, cause I'll just run it from my hand.
Me too.
Which is so cool to be able to do that.
Yeah. So what we use it for is, you have to remember, I do a lot of big tree pruning.
Right. Yeah.
So just that one branch removal. And I do a lot of negative rigging on it.
Really? You're negative rigging from it, huh? So you're strapping it onto the branch you're cutting, just swinging it underneath.
Yep. And then
do you just choke it off with a sling or what?
Yeah, I just use a carabiner and a loop runner.
Oh, okay.
And I had a custom,
I can see that being good.
I have a custom design loop runner that is just for me. It hasn't come out yet. And it allows me to adjust a little bit differently. But I also, here's another tip. I also use my adjustable friction savers. So
those things are great.
I'll tie off a stopper knot in the tail, cinch it up to where I want it to be, and then hook it through the rings. And that becomes because
that'll suck it up closer to the trunk and a little less flop around. That's a good idea.
And I mean, we're talking about a rigging wrench. We're not dropping 500-pound pieces or 1,000-pound pieces on it, right?
I'm sad my rigging wrench got broken the last time it got used.
Well,
I set up this beautiful trolley system. There's this steep hillside. We were dragging. I was gonna set this. I spent like 2 hours setting this thing up between two pines. It was all the weight was evenly distributed. It was set to where you could have a lifting action and then a pulling action, and it was all like should take no effort. You could pull out all this slack because there's so much rope and drag big piles to the line and carry it up with no excess loads on anything. And I put one weak carabiner on at the anchor just in case. So if they're gonna load it, this little 5,000 pound non-locking gated climbing carabiner will break, and I will know that they overloaded this darn system. And sure enough, halfway through the day, I get a call. Hey, it broke. How do we put it back together?
Well,
it got busted in that process.
Oh man. Yeah, well, somebody was using mine on a job and somehow it got dropped and we didn't notice it and it got lost. But here's an interesting tidbit for everybody, right? I had an extra rope wrench. So I just bought the tether with the pulley sewn on. Because you can buy just the tether spine and the pulley sewn on from somebody. I'm not going to say who.
That's the old style rigging wrench because they had made a few of those with the pulley on it.
Yeah, so now they have the ISC ones, not the singing tree ones. And they have the aluminum tether in between them.
Built in there.
But it's a little bit different. It's a bit bulkier. It's not...
It's pretty beefy, though. That's the one I had. I liked it.
One of them is really big.
Yeah, and the one-way bearing where it's friction on one side and then spins the other direction was rad.
Oh, really? See, I haven't used that one yet. I need to use that one.
It has the downside of the groundy can't pull the rope back up to you as efficient. No, you can't pull the rope down to your material as efficiently. The rope, the cool thing about it is, you got a guy who knows what he's doing sweating on the rope. You can really crank up on the branches. In fact, one of our favorite tools to use, because I don't have one of those big Steins or the GRCSs with the crank, we'll have a guy. I've got a couple of soft shackles that I've made, and I'll put the ISC rope jack onto my porter wrap, crank on it with the rope wrench up there, and it'll capture your slack. And then of course you can just take the rope jack off with it all under tension and everything. And I've just straight lifted branches and swung them over roofs and stuff without any trouble at all with that setup. It's really pretty incredible.
So did you happen to understand what I was mentioning to you in your video comment about how to release the rope jack easily? Because we all if you haven't used the rope jack for a few days, you forget how to undo the cams.
Oh
right?
yeah, you're training someone new. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
And of course, every time you're training somebody new, you look like an idiot because that's the one time you don't do it in the right order. What I have found is if I get it to where it like the last pull, it's not way above my head. It's like at a decent level. If I pull down on it, I can unhook the carabiner and let the whole device go up.
Okay. Yeah.
Both cams are off tension.
Yeah. So you're saying if you can get enough tension to or you can pull enough relieve enough tension to unhook the whole thing and just have it locked off. I mean, we're putting way more tension than that on it. You could never get it. But that really, I mean, once they get it stuck in the head, like it works just fine holding it down, undoing the one. But it's a trick.
It's a pain. But I do like the rope jack a lot.
It has been real effective. Of course, now that we have the ditch witch, it's kind of don't use that kind of thing as much anymore. But
well, you're just. But I use my skid steer for the stump
grinder.
That's
true. That thing's heavy enough.
I hook it and I just pull a rope back on. I have on the head
24 horse gas motor on it or so.
Yeah, it's a gas motor, 25 horse.
Okay, yeah, a little V-twin thing.
Yeah, it's one of those Kohlers, just like on the Vermeer chippers.
Yep.
It's the same motor. They just have it set in. Now, I will say you have to take the whole stinking machine apart to get to anything.
It's I hate that about the Vermeer. It's one of the things I hate about the Dingo too. That's the beautiful thing about the ditch witch. It's got these little like buttons that you click that pop these latches, and then the hood comes up, and then there's a secondary piece of grate in the front that's not even bolted at all. Once the hood's up, you can just pop it and slide it out, and the whole all your fuel filters, your hydraulic filter, everything is like exposed right in the open. It's just it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's
I love it when designers are the same people who are using it.
Dude, I know we had, so just real quick, touching back on what we were talking about expressing, being open about what my business cost me.
Right.
In between November and December, I blew up the transmission in my tree service ATV.
Ooh.
Which cost, it's gone. It's not even worth repairing. I blew up the starter in my stump grinder, so that cost me $800 to replace by the time I bought the starter, and because I had jobs to do, so I paid somebody to put it in.
Right.
$800. And then my chipper's having issues. It's a brand new chipper, 277 hours on it, and they're having a shorting issue where it just won't crank and it blows fuses.
Oh, it's so annoying.
And Vermeer can't figure it out. And
dude, Vermeer's, everything I've ever used by Vermeer has been crap.
It's not the best. And then the transmission in my pickup blows up and it costs me
Oh, painful. And in the wintertime when you just can't do the same volume as you would in the summer and the spring.
So
at least you got time to fix the stuff.
Yeah, it cost me about $8,000 in 1 month of just equipment repairs.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, and stuff I wasn't even expecting, right? It wasn't even like things you kind of knew were on the verge of.
Right. You've got your little kiddie corner where you're stashing things away for those things you're going to have to catch up on someday.
Yeah. So it was.
Yeah, that's the business for you, though. I mean,
it is.
I think without fail, I've probably put close to 40% of everything I make back into the business pretty much since I started climbing.
Yeah. I mean, my company currently, right, I have put about 70% of everything back into the business for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And then now, hopefully, if I have a good season, it'll be more along the 35 to 40% range. So if you guys are looking at starting a business, you have to have fairly deep pockets up front. And I don't mean you have to have the money immediately, but you have to be willing to not live on very much up front.
Yep.
Because a lot of what you make is going to go back.
The company I've worked for, we've not quite doubled, but almost doubled. We've been basically 100% every year more, just about. So it's not quite doubling, but it's for like 4 or 5 years straight. And even though we've increased our sales volume that much, I mean, it's more than $100,000 more every year for 5, 6 years straight. We're still like, the owner of that company is still like living in the same house. We're bought the same trucks pretty much. His standard of living hasn't changed much. He's not saving up a huge amount of money. Like we're getting more efficient. We're doing more work. We're acquiring more equipment. The value of the company is growing. But it's not like some big moneymaker, and we're expensive. Like we're one of the higher end crews in the area, and we charge really good money, and everyone gets out fine, but it's just not. And we don't break things. We very rarely have to go back and like fix problems. We've almost never had any significant damages on anything we do. We're really careful. We have excellently trained guys. I mean, I'm a trainer more than I am anything else. And these are the guys I work with every day. And it's not a big money game. Like, it's fun and it's rewarding and it's a good solid career, and you can make a living and get by comfortably even in California, but it's not like some huge money maker.
Well, that's it for me. People ask, well, you charge a lot. You must be raking in the dough. And I'm like, I tell people, I spent 1/3 of your total job just paying my guys.
Cost. Right.
That's just in my guys. That's not even the fuel. That's not even the wear and tear on equipment. That's not the doling of my chipper, in my knives, and
the insurance, the workers' comp.
No.
I mean, it all just is good. It's expensive.
If you have a good climber, you're going to pay him well.
You better, because he's going to go somewhere else, or he's going to start his own thing. Because if he's a good climber, he can do it.
I mean, out here, a good climber can make I pay a good climber somewhere between $350 and $450 a day.
Oh, okay. I mean, that would
California, that's not a good pay, is what I've heard.
Yeah, it's a little on the low end, but I mean, between 300 and 800, depending on how much equipment and everything that they bring.
Yeah.
But that would be, 800 that would be a lot.
Yeah. So I know some guys out on the East Coast as well that are making, between 600 and 900 for what they bring out and how efficient they are or whatever. But out here, paying that kind of money is a pretty good income, and you could totally live. Man, so I run subcontractors because I don't use them on every job, but I use guys that are insured and I trust, and I do a lot of work just by myself. But now it's gotten to where my groundie's with me all the time. He's still a
you should know better than to be climbing by yourself, Eric. Come on, man.
I know, man. But the first 2 years I climbed, I did everything by myself. And it was right. I'm actually backwards.
You have much family?
I shouldn't have been climbing new by myself.
Right.
I did it backwards, but
hey, when you don't know any better, it's amazing the things that we do and survive.
I actually have a groundie who, he's also a contractor. He does work for other people and stuff as well, but he's with me a lot now just because he wants to be. Yeah. And, still, I mean, I pay higher than most jobs out here pay. And it's amazing. I've had people just say, this is too hard. And I'm like, you're not going to find anywhere in town that pays this well for a groundie.
Yep.
200 to 250 around here a day for a groundie is
great pay for a groundsman. Yep.
But dude, I've had them hitchhike off the job. And I'm like,
that's the industry though. That's just how it works. It's tough. It's a hard job. You got to have good people. I'm really thankful right now. I got my cousin came up from SoCal. He's right out of high school. Brilliant kid. He is so much fun to talk with because he and I are the same sort of, we're both inventors. I mean, I've got this video of this thing he made. He made like a little, it's like a little mini flamethrower on his wrist. Like it's just silly little circuitry invention with a battery and igniter and stuff. It's crazy. But anyway, he pays attention. Like he actually looks and he's eager and he doesn't complain at all. And this other guy, he's a son of a tree climber, or not a tree climber, a timber faller. And he's just solid dude, really happy, great attitude. He pays.
You want a lower cost of living and a good guy to work for, come work for me.
Yeah. Right. But it's tough. It's tough finding good guys, keep them around. Got to pay them well, treat them well, train them well.
Well, and I'm the kind of guy that, so like, there's a lot of people that'll go back and instantly try to ask for more money from the client when something doesn't go right.
Right.
I'll actually eat the job a lot of times.
Absolutely.
Out of my own pocket. But what happens is, and never underestimate everybody out there listening. Josiah knows, I can tell by the way we were talking earlier. Never underestimate what the neighbors notice. Right. Yeah, so like true. I have actually done a job where somebody was just being a jerk, and they made me come out there 2 or 3 times before they would finish paying me, because one branch or this branch, or, you know what I mean? And I'm out there and I'm like climbing the tree by myself, finishing up this stupid job. My crew's already on another job, and neighbors will call me months later and say, man, I saw you over there and you guys like just made sure that job happened. I hope you made a lot of money, because that guy's a jerk and he was making you. And I'm like, no, I lost money on it. And they're like, yeah, but because you did such a good job, even when it wasn't going the way you wanted, that's why we called you. We knew you'd be a diligent guy.
Yeah. Oh, it's so valuable. That's part of that managing expectations thing too, is like, as long as you can walk away from it. You've told them what to expect. I mean, I will very frequently undersell what we're going to do. I will frequently say, look, we're going to break this stuff, or it's likely that these things will be broken. We'll do our best. Likely that this stuff will be broken. There's going to be some mess left over. Obviously, yeah. I'm not a landscaper. I'm a tree guy. We'll rake up the majority of it. You're going to have some mess, blah, blah, blah. And when we leave, it's beautiful. Like, we don't break the stuff. We clean up really good. They're surprised. All is well.
Got the blowers out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just makes those little things make such a difference.
But every once in a while, you still get that jerk.
Yep.
And the way you respond and the quality of work you do when they become that jerk, people notice.
Yeah, sometimes they do. Yeah, at least your heart will leave you. It will leave you feeling good. You'll sleep well at night.
Yeah,
after you get over being mad.
I just view it as, you know what? I'm probably going to get the money I lost back anyway, in references from other jobs.
Right, and that's the hope. I mean, a bad reference does a lot to destroy things, but as long as you have those good ones around, you'll always have someone fighting your end of the argument on next door.
Yeah, it's very true. So, well, Josiah, I've actually kept you on longer than I've said.
It's all right, man. It's a good conversation. We should do it again. There's a lot of other things we didn't really even talk about. I mean, it'd be fun to talk about content generation and
well, I want to get in touch with you just on the side one day. We need to talk, I think.
Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good to connect up.
Yeah,
I'm about ready to have my first little girl though here, so my life's gonna get chaotic.
Oh yeah.
My wife's due in January, end of January. Wow.
Congratulations.
And, thanks. I'm excited about it, but it's also got my heart going pretty good too.
Yeah, and you've just had another niece or nephew.
Oh yeah, so I've got 4 siblings in my family, so there's 4 of us. All of us have had babies within the last year or are going to have babies. So both my sisters just had their kids within the last 6 weeks. And my brother, his wife, is having his about the same time we're having ours. So
oh, wow.
Big family.
Your 4 parents.
Yeah. Well, they're excited to be sure.
Yeah. But man, the amount of baby shower gifts that they're having to.
They got nothing better to do. My dad's retired.
he's rolling in money.
Yeah, exactly. He's twice retired now, so he's retired, but he's back working again because he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Yeah, put him on the ropes.
Yeah, right. I have. He does really well, actually.
Yeah, I've actually worked with a couple of guys that were like mid-60s, and they did more diligent work than the young guys do.
Yeah, right. It's crazy. Well, and he's got that same sort of physics mind that I do. Yeah. My uncle, all his whole side of the family are all engineers. My grandpa was a shop teacher and inventor. Like, that's just my uncle Gary. He's an engineer for Boeing. He's got more patents for Boeing than anyone in the company's history.
Really?
Like, he invents things to help diagnose problems on the airplanes.
Sweet.
So that's just kind of the mentality of all these guys.
Yeah.
So I get my dad out there and he sees exactly what needs to happen. I don't have to talk to him. It's great. With the ditch witch too, he can just run the machine. Why not?
But be careful. People like that, you're going to leave them with the machine for 3 hours and you're coming back and it's going to be a different machine.
Right? They'll have attachments welded on, and hey, I made this chainsaw holder over here, and right.
It's cool though. It's cool to be an inventor.
That's another thing we got to talk about. There's a whole world of I've got so many inventions like bubbling, and I want to hear about the innovation of these companies you're talking to and working with.
Yeah, you know what? Let me know. I can probably help you out with some of that. And I think
I'd love to. It'd be super
I think
fun.
you'd be a good fit for some of them too. Okay.
Got some working prototypes and all sorts of fun
stuff. I've got some connections, I mean, I'm not saying, I've got the connections, but I've got a few. And if they are working prototypes, so if you have something, he can possibly help out with, getting it to the right people. Because what a lot of people don't know, and we'll wrap up after this, but what a lot of people don't know is, like, when Jamie brought the akimbo to them, it wasn't in production form. He made it, and it worked, right? But you have to do a lot of work to
iteration after iteration after iteration after iteration
to make it practical for production. So a lot of people think, oh, well, he had like a working device. It instantly goes and there you are. It's not that easy.
Right.
No invention is. And I'm not, I'm not divulging any information that's not known. He's just an example. But none of the designs that come out as a prototype are in production form. That's why they are a prototype. So
that's how that stuff goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. It was a blast talking to you.
It was a pleasure. It's great to finally meet you face to face.
Yeah.
And not just through the interwebs.
Yeah. I mean, people probably wouldn't have even known that we've never spoken to each other before. Yeah. I love your videos. Keep it up, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Enjoy the podcast.
Well, thank you.
Keep on it.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Doing a service to the industry, man. We really are.
I hope so, because sometimes I doubt myself a little bit. I'm like, I don't know if I'm the qualified one to be doing a podcast, but I try.
Well, that makes it better, because someone who is convinced they're the qualified one's probably boring to listen to and likely to sound like an idiot anyway.
So thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to check out his Josiah, his new podcast, which is
Truth and Fiction.
Okay. Yep. He is Tree Strider on Instagram, Strider Tree Gear on YouTube, if I remember correct, and on Facebook. And I'll put some links in the description of this for his stuff and my stuff that we talked about. And then also, please don't forget to go check out his Patreon page. If you can support him, that would be great. I can speak from firsthand experience. It's not easy to do what we do as far as producing content. It's easy for you guys to demand stuff of us for free. It's hard for us to actually produce it.
Yeah, and anyone who knows that this stuff doesn't really make any money either. I mean, the whole YouTube thing, I pay my brother to do it, and I'm making a little bit of money from those views, but it's still very well in the hole.
Oh yeah.
Not even counting lost time. It's a cost, not an income.
No. And with that in mind, I don't know if you do this, Josiah, but what I do is I actually have, along with my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Eric McGrew. You can subscribe to that. The lowest subscription is like $2. But what I also do is I have a donation button. So if you don't want to have a monthly subscription, but you still want to help me out, which would be greatly appreciated, you can just do a PayPal donation, a one-time donation.
That's cool. I didn't know. I've never I just set the Patreon up like 2 days ago. So
yeah,
I have to look into that.
It's some people like it one way, some people like it another, right? So if you guys want to do that, but another huge help is just going by my sponsors and checking them out. GapArborSupply.com. Really cannot recommend those guys enough for an arb shop. Shipping is on time as well, which is a big deal. It's fast.
More than to be said for most.
Yeah. Also WeaverArborist.com, of course, arbshirts.com, and Just Send It Sauls. So thanks again, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I am just going to release this episode as one full-length episode because I have so many episodes building up. I'd be into next season easily with them all. So I'm just going to start releasing longer ones. And I hope you guys enjoy it on your drive or in the tree or whatever. Just be safe out there.
Yep. Climb safe and be excellent, my friends.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Eric. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, man. No problem.